I remember a few years ago I was in an airplane from London to Bombay. I live in Bombay, Mumbai. And as we were flying through the sky, it was British Airways. There was all this buzzers going off and alarms. And then they said, "We are having an emergency. We are going to have an emergency landing." And every 3 or 4 minutes, this alarm went off, and they kept telling us what we had to do. They took the biggest, strongest guys and moved their seats to near the exit doors. And then they told us, how you have to put your head down and put your legs up, and all these ways by which, you're not going to be less chances of being destroyed. And the airline hostesses were teaching everybody, and people were crying, and children were crying, and people were really getting scared. And the airline hostesses, they were as scared as the rest of us, but they had to tell us not to be scared. But hardly anyone could take them too serious. Anyways, when we finally were coming close to the tarmac, we saw from pretty high up about 25 ambulances, fire trucks with their lights blinking, lining the runway. So we realized this is actually a pretty serious subject happening here. Now, trying to be a spiritual person myself, I pray every day, so much I pray, and I chant God's names every day so much, and I meditate. But usually on airplanes, I'm kind of like that, But this flight, I wasn't. When I was hearing these buzzers, and I was looking down at those flashing lights, and I remember my meditation, my prayer, was not the slightest bit ritualistic. It was totally unsectarian. There was no ego involved. It was about, I need help. And there's nothing I can do about it. I can't fix what the control system of the airplane went out. What could I do? And I remember thinking, and actually this happened just a couple weeks after my friend Bhakti Tirtha Swami passed away. And I was right at his bedside, holding his hand as he asked me to do. When he passed away, there were hundreds of people all around him, praying, crying in love for him, chanting God's names. You were there, Gauravaniji? Wasn't it beautiful? So much love, so much prayer. And those prayers were going on for weeks before it happened, and it culminated at that moment. And I was there with him. And I was thinking, I'm going to go. I might go now, and nobody even knows. Nobody's praying for me. Nobody's chanting for me. I'm just on this plane. So when I was turning to God, this lasted about an hour, this emergency landing. The whole process. At a certain point, I can tell you honestly, no pride, I felt totally liberated and fearless. It just didn't matter anymore. Because I just had to go so deep, there was nowhere outside to turn to. I had to go to God within my heart, and I turned. And when I was chanting his names and praying, it was not any longer, save me. It's just everybody I knew, I was just praying to God to bless them and bless my students, bless my family, bless all humanity, bless all living beings. And I was just praying for blessings, and I became so blissful because I wasn't asking for anything for myself. I just was praying for God to bless. And Didn't matter what happened with the plane. And then I think what they told me we did is we landed on the ground at something like 700 miles an hour or something, but I don't remember exactly, but it was a huge, we landed so fast. He just, and we were bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. We could, all the luggage up top, the things were breaking open and luggage was flying down and babies were crying and people were screaming and we could hear the luggage below going vroom, 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 vroom. And we saw all the fire trucks following us on both sides. And they had to stop, and there was smoke from the tires just pouring out. And finally we stopped. And it just smelled like smoke and burning rubber and fire, and all the trucks surrounded us and they had their hoses. Then they announced we're not out of danger, because at any moment, they didn't say this, but we knew, at any moment, because of the heat of the landing, this plane could blow up. And they wouldn't let us come near the terminal. So we're all waiting. I was meditating. It was so nice. And then finally, about a half hour later, the plane starts to move. And the pilot says, "We are sorry for the inconvenience. But sometimes these things happen in the aviation technology." And he said, "But we are hoping that next time you fly, you choose British Airways." Now, I can tell you honestly, I'm not praying for that to happen again, believe me. But I can tell you, when I look back, I was more God conscious on that flight than any other time before in my life. And as far as flights, stress can help us to really go within and access a divine power beyond our own, wherein we can really be instruments of positive change. Not just superficial positive changes, but based on the deep foundation of love and compassion that we find within ourselves. And in yoga, the asanas, the breath control, the meditation, the chanting of mantras, ultimately it's all meant to bring us, to reconnect us to that spiritual essence that we have, and to perceive the sacredness of that spiritual essence in everyone. There's a beautiful verse, Trinarapi sunichena taror ibasi hishnuna. Amani namanadena kirtaniya sadahari. If one really wants to access the Lord through our hymns, our prayers, our chanting, our meditation, then we should be humble like a blade of grass, forgiving like a tree. We should offer all honor and respect to all living beings and not demand respect for oneself. In that state, which is our nature, what power can flow through us to create beautiful things within this world? You see, from the yogic or real spiritual perspective, we're seeing things with the understanding that I am, we all are, eternal, divine, parts of God. The soul within us is all beautiful, all loving, and nothing can destroy it. The body and the mind, it's going to be destroyed by the by nature's course anyway. But as long as we have it, it's a sacred tool. It's a sacred vehicle by which we could do wonderful things within this world. When we understand that we're eternal, and we understand the beauty of the love that is within us, then the things that bother us in this world really don't bother us anymore, because they're pretty insignificant. There's really nothing to fear. We can forgive ourselves. We can overcome our own depression and self-guilt because we understand the beauty inherent within us. And we can improve in doing so. And we can forgive others as well. Yes, life is beautiful. One great writer said, truth is beauty and beauty is truth. The only real reality is beauty. The beauty of the divinity of the soul, the beauty of divinity of God, the beauty within everything. What is all the ugliness? It's a product of ignorance. Why people's egos get in the way so much. So really to be an instrument of such divine change within this world, this yoga of psychology is such a gift. And I've tried to just speak a few words that I was inspired to speak by our beloved Yogi Dean. Yeah, so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful to all of you. Would anyone like to ask any questions? Yes.
How were you inspired at such a young age? I'm reading your book now. I'm on page 79. And I really like it. And I'm just amazed at how at such a young age you were inspired to, you have this spiritual yearning and how you like traveled all across the world from Europe to India. And I mean, it's really hard for someone normal to take that step and to be so daring. How was it for you?
I guess I've always been abnormal. Well, the subject of the book is, I was born in 1950. And by the way, just to get back to where I led you before, I never wanted to write this book. Over a period of about 35 years, whenever I would tell a story about my travels in those days, the common reaction was, you should write a book. And my response was always the same, never. For two reasons. You know, I'm trying to give up this arrogance, and I was thinking, isn't it arrogant to write a whole book about me? I mean, some people could do it, it's all right, but I'm on a spiritual path trying to give up all this stuff. Every page is going to be filled with the words I, me, and mine. And the second reason was that I thought, if I tell the truth, nobody will believe me. Because so many incredible things happened on that journey.